pissed off. You know? And I don't get pissed off about movies very often.
What a bomb. What a disappointment. Couldn't believe my eyes.
Utterly disappointing.
An old asshole who's drinking titty milk and fishing with a spear that he might as well be shoving up his ass.
There are a lot of angry Star Wars fans out there right now. And to be honest, I get it. The Last Jedi failed to live up to fans' expectations, and Solo was obviously the product of a rushed job to fix what wasn't originally working. They both left fans wanting. And that's okay. If you don't like the direction of the new Star Wars movies, books, or TV shows, you're entitled to that. It's absolutely fine. But I just feel like there's a toxicity in this disapproval, which I get. Star Wars is a big deal to a lot of people. To change what a Star Wars story is akin to sacrificing a sacred cow. But I feel like there's a better way to talk about this. This past summer while on vacation, I had this idea to read through the Star Wars books and talk about them on this YouTube channel. Not so much review and state whether I like the book or not, which I will do, but to look at the story structure, and what that story does well. I firmly believe that even in bad art, there within still lie good ideas. And that's going to be the purpose of the series. I'm going to start with the new canon, starting with the novelization of the Phantom Menace, which I know is technically Legends, but we're just going to go with it. And I don't want to talk about the failures of the story, but focus on what it did well. So, let's get this started. Hi, I'm Vladimir Alexander, you can call me Alex, and this is Reading Star Wars. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That's a lot of colons. The Phantom Menace was written by Terry Brooks. Terry Brooks is known for his Shannara and Landover novels, and please forgive me for butchering the pronunciation if I did of Shannara. I haven't read these books. The only Terry Brooks book I've read so far is this one, the Phantom Menace novelization, and he did a fantastic job with it. At first, he wrote mainly sci-fi, westerns, generic fiction, and nonfiction. It was when he was given Lord of the Rings while in college that inspired him to write mainly in fantasy for his career. And here's a fun fact. He was handpicked by George Lucas to be the writer of the novelization of The Phantom Menace. So how does a story stack up? Well, first, let's talk about story structure. Think of story structure like architecture. There are houses, shacks, shanties, igloos, huts, office buildings, skyscrapers, museums, palaces, pyramids, and oh so much more. But in order to be a stable and strong structure, the architect has to design her building to obey the laws of physics. So even though buildings may look wildly different from each other, the principles are the same for each. And just like architecture, each story has different needs with different styles and will look and feel differently, but it must obey the laws of storytelling that are ingrained in each of us. All of us know what makes a good story work, even if we can't really verbalize it, or even bring to the forefront of our mind why. It's just who we are as humans. We are, by nature, storytellers. It kind of forms the basis of our communication. But there is a way to symbolize the structure that we all know innately. The story circle. This is what Dan Harmon uses to break a story. He's a creator of Community and co-creator of Rick and Morty. First, you'll see the circle is divided into a white top half and a black bottom half. The top half represents life, consciousness, and order. The bottom half represents death, subconscious, and chaos. And then from there, the circle is divided into 8 segments. This represents the core of the story. These 8 segments are the journey your character is going to go on. So the first is just you, the hero. And the hero in their element. It's their everyday life. Everything is in order. It's safe. But then, number 2, they want or need something. So number 3, they go. They go to get what they need. This leads them into the chaos area of the circle, or the chaos realm, as I'm going to call it. In this area, they're going to be pushed to the brink. It's going to challenge them and change them. The things they fear, they will face here. Well, down in this chaos area, they're going to search what they're looking for, find what they need, and then take it, but pay a heavy price for what they desire. And then they'll return home, which is a journey back to order. But they not only return, they return, lastly, number 8, having changed. Now, what drives change is the payment of that price from earlier, which is typically something dear to them that they have to let go of. That's key. That price has to change them. Otherwise, what was the point of that journey? This is called character development. And generally, the character will develop from a moral/emotional wound that they have. They have to have some sort of deficiency. It's out of the wound, so to speak, the flower will grow. It's this wound that the story should test. It's also this wound that will tempt our hero to sacrifice his value system. And that's another area of growth and development. The hero should have values that he keeps to. The events of the story will test to see if he truly holds those values. Will he give them up for anything? Will he falter in his virtue? Will what he values change? Will it be for the better or worse? That's what makes a character dynamic and interesting. And this is what makes for the core of a good story. Now let's talk about Phantom Menace. I want to take a look at the story through 3 characters, and I'm putting 3 in quotations because our first character is actually a set of 2. We're going to focus on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, Padme, and then, of course, Anakin. The hero of the story isn't who the writer tells us who the hero of the story is. He has to show us who the hero is by the actions he makes. The hero is the one who pushes the story forward and shows the most growth and progression. He'll also define the values the story wants to impart onto us. And in The Phantom Menace, that's Qui-Gon Jinn. It's not Anakin. The main character of a story, even an ensemble cast like Star Wars, is going to be the person who puts forth the greatest effort in maintaining agency of their own story, and the one who pushes the story forward the most. We see Padme do this to an extent, but the main actor in these events is Qui-Gon. He simply just doesn't react to the events around him. He's moving with the flow while also constantly reformulating his plans to achieve his own goal and get what he wants and needs. We see this in the beginning when the negotiations fail and the Trade Federation begins invading Naboo. His want is to end the Trade Federation's blockade and to help the Queen protect her people. Now that the Trade Federation is invading, he reformulates his plan to get to the Queen to protect her. When they don't land anywhere near Theed, where the Queen is, he comes across Jar Jar, who is not everyone's favorite character, though I do like how Qui-Gon introduces him to Obi-Wan when they reconnect in the forest.
What's this?
A local.
So he rescues the Queen, and they're going to go to Coruscant where they can plead to the Senate to help bring an end to the invasion. But they're diverted from their course towards Coruscant. And even in this, Qui-Gon is maintaining agency over his journey. He's reacting, reformulating, and re-engaging. And then there's Qui-Gon's relationship with Obi-Wan, his pupil that he is training, his Padawan learner. Through these events, we begin to see there's an animosity between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. The two have a great respect for each other and love one another, but they butt heads a lot. And Terry Brooks goes into a bit more detail about this than the movie does. They have clashing personalities and personal philosophies and how they approach the Force. Qui-Gon is what I would call a faithful rebel. He strongly believes in the Jedi Order and the core of their teachings, but he views them as having put tradition in place over adherence to their teachings about the Force. While he firmly holds to the Jedi way, he believes the Council has become complacent, no longer truly adhering to the Force as much as they adhere to their extracurricular traditions. And Qui-Gon is going to stand up to that. He's going to defy them wherever he sees fit, because he doesn't believe they completely follow the will of the Force like he does. This is Qui-Gon. He is this person to a fault. Because of this, he also misses things. He misses the bigger picture. Like at the very beginning when Obi-Wan can sense that there is something else going on.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I don't sense anything.
He is sensing the Sith, even before they encounter Darth Maul on Tatooine. Qui-Gon shuts him down. He's so concerned with the moment by moment, he can and does miss what is truly happening behind the scenes.
But Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
But not at the expense of the moment. Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
So that's one point of contention. And when Qui-Gon discovered Anakin Skywalker, he was willing to openly defy the Council and put his relationship with Obi-Wan in jeopardy when he announces he would take Anakin as his Padawan learner. He was willing to replace Obi-Wan in that instant to train this troubled child he found in the backwoods of the galaxy. It's even more strain on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship. Obi-Wan agreed with the Council's choice on not training Anakin. While Qui-Gon is a free-thinking rebel, Kenobi is a company man through and through. This is what causes them to conflict with each other so much. Obi-Wan didn't waver from the authority of the Jedi Council, while Qui-Gon would openly talk against it when he felt they had contradicted their own values. It's this personality trait that becomes Qui-Gon's demise. His concentration on the here and now came at the expense of being mindful of the future and the greater events surrounding him. There's an excellent video by the Stupendous Wave that talks about the Darth Maul fight and how this trait of Qui-Gon's got him killed. I'll put the link down below. I suggest you take it out. It's an interesting take. So if Qui-Gon's failing was in being too much of a rebel, Obi-Wan's failing was in not being flexible enough to know when the Jedi Council may be wrong. Thankfully, Obi-Wan doesn't take Qui-Gon's rash choices as personally insulting. He actually understands that his master does have great confidence in him, and he truly admires and respects Qui-Gon, and some of his idiosyncrasies do wind up rubbing off on Obi-Wan. And this is where we see the greatest change in the story. Even though this is Qui-Gon's story, since he is the one pushing the story forward, it is equally shared with Obi-Wan, who is the one who gets what he wants, pays a heavy price for it, and changes. See, while Qui-Gon wants to protect the Queen, Obi-Wan's chief desire, which we find closer to the end, is to become a Jedi Knight.
I am ready to face the trials.
He doesn't face the typical trials that the Jedi Order has for Padawans to complete, but instead his fight and defeat of a Sith Lord acts in place of his trials. And in this he lost his master, a man who was like a father to him, even though they were very different men. And while Obi-Wan struggled with keeping himself in the here and now, it's in that moment, hanging on a ledge for dear life, that he learns the strength of that technique. He becomes mindful of his surroundings in the present moment. Even though that was Qui-Gon's downfall, this leads to Obi-Wan's success, because he's more balanced between looking to the future and remaining in the present. Obi-Wan becomes what Qui-Gon wishes he could have been, something Qui-Gon even acknowledges. Obi-Wan becomes a greater Jedi because he learns how to balance that rebellious attitude with compromise and understanding, being present while mindful of the future at the same time. To get a good picture of Padme's journey through the Phantom Menace, we have to take a look at it with the knowledge that she is indeed Queen Amidala throughout the whole story. Which, I will add, the book does a better job of foreshadowing and telegraphing that specific plot twist than the movie did. Padme's arc isn't as exciting or nuanced as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's. She's a peace-loving ruler that doesn't wish to see her people suffer and go to war. Then they go to war. It was inevitable. No matter what her desires were, she is then forced on her journey. She still tries to get what she wants using the proper peaceful channels like emotion in the Senate. It fails. And in this moment, she realizes she has to do something brash. She has to stab a faithful ally and friend in the back. See, the Supreme Chancellor of the Senate, Valorum, is on Padme's side. He's the one that sent Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to go and negotiate a peace and end the blockade. But all of this is becoming very ineffective. In that moment at the Senate floor, she learns that a good leader sometimes has to get her hands dirty. A good leader sometimes has to go to war, and there will be casualties. This is her price she has to pay to get what she wants. But she's young and she's naive and therefore easily manipulated. While she may not know it, us Star Wars fans know who Palpatine really is. The man orchestrating this whole crisis to get elected into the Supreme Chancellor position to take power over the Republic. But Padme's not aware of that when she makes this choice. Shortly after calling the vote for no confidence, she decides she needs to go back home to Naboo. She's already declared a war in the Senate, so to speak, sacrificed a good ally, and now she needs to go to war for the good of her people. This is her journey back from the Chaos Realm. She got what she needed. She lost a bit of herself in it, but is coming back intact and knowing that leading requires making hard choices and hard sacrifices. And there are times you have to do things that you don't want to do. While peace is the objective, you sometimes have to go to war. Anakin is an interesting character.
What?
And that's made possible by the novelization. Unlike the movie, which opens up with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, the book opens up with Anakin in a pod race. The very pod race he crashed Watto's pod in. It was barely mentioned in the movie, was a throwaway line to up the stakes of the pod racing sequence. But in the book, Terry Brooks uses it to establish Anakin's connection with the Force and his incredible supernatural skills as a pilot. When we meet Anakin, this isn't his chaos realm. This is actually his realm of order. For the rest of the characters, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Padme, and Panaka and the others, they are in the middle of their adventure, in the midst of searching for their need. Tatooine is a strange place for them. They're in their chaos realm. They don't know it. They're trying to find what they want. And Anakin is just there. His desires haven't been established at this point in the story. It's not established until they're eating dinner during the sandstorm. He wants to be free. He doesn't want to be a slave anymore. He's actually working to figure out a way to remove the tracker in him and his mom so that way they can run away. But that's just another throwaway line. We don't actually see him doing any of that. He just says, I'm working on it. But he does nothing himself to accomplish this. His freedom is actually given to him by Qui-Gon. Anakin just simply reacts to the actions of Qui-Gon and doesn't advance his story forward in any meaningful way. And that's his whole role in the story. He accomplishes everything by happenstance and accident. He doesn't put forth any meaningful action to fulfill his own destiny. He's just along for the ride. I will say at the very least, Terry Brooks does an excellent job of giving more detail on how Anakin destroys the droid control ship. While the movie makes everything seem like a happy accident, he heavily alludes that his careening into the control ship and firing the proton torpedoes into the reactor were done by the will of the Force, as if something else was acting upon Anakin without him consciously being aware of it, which is also used as a humorous moment when he fires the torpedoes and misses every droid and complains about missing his shot. The only action of consequence Anakin takes is to leave his mother behind, which is more greatly explored through the book than in the movie. This action splits Anakin in two. He doesn't get over it. For the rest of the story, Anakin is filled with both hope for his future and regret in leaving behind the one anchor he had that made sense to him. So once our heroes leave Tatooine, Qui-Gon has what he needs and is making his journey home, while Anakin, on the other hand, is descending into the Chaos Realm. He doesn't understand this world at all. It's foreign to him, and he feels scared and alone, with only Padme to give him true comfort. Which, as a side note, let's talk about the creepiness of this relationship for a second. He's 9, she's 14, the two obviously share a bond, and 9 and 14 is a huge age difference, at least at that point in time. Like, the difference between a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old is just astronomical. And Anakin is also kind of supplementing his lost relationship with his mother with that of Padme, and she kind of reciprocates it. It's like a gross fetish adult movie of some kind. Anyway, while Padme, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan get their resolutions of exiting the Chaos Realm and coming home having changed, Anakin does not get that luxury. He's left at claiming what he wants, to be free and to become a Jedi Knight. But he doesn't ascend. He stays here in chaos, and this may actually be the point. Now that I'm looking at this more closely, the story of the prequels is a story of how Anakin falls to the dark side and becomes Vader. If in this initial story he gets what he wants and pays a heavy price for it, but never returns home having changed, then this is the start of his descent. This is the start of Anakin not being able to adapt and change, and instead of coming out of chaos, he becomes chaos, learns to feed off of it and embrace it, because he never learned how to cope with the price he had to pay for what he wanted, his freedom. Now, I know I didn't mention this at the beginning of the video, but I just want to talk about the villains for a second. I have one question for Newt Gunray and the Trade Federation. What do they want? Like, seriously, what do they want? What's their end game? I get it, have Amidala sign a treaty to make this invasion legal, but why did they invade in the first place? What are they going to do once they have possession of Naboo? What's their plan? I mean, I understand Sidious's endgame. He wants to become Supreme Chancellor. That's it. This whole thing for him is to get more power. He doesn't care what happens to Gunray. So how does this benefit the Trade Federation? How does this blockade and invasion further their own interests? What do they want? I know a lot of us like to shit on the Phantom Menace, myself included, but you know what? It's not that bad, actually. There are some really interesting characters who have more depth than we give them credit for, and they need to lighten up on Jar Jar. He is annoying, but he accomplishes exactly what he was set out to do, be comedic relief for children. And I was 12 when this came out, and I was fine with it. I was a child. Seeing Jar Jar step and poop was funny. Seeing anyone step and poop is funny. Other than that, the only things going against Phantom Menace is that the villains are pretty half-baked, and the movie can be really boring.
Have the Senate bogged down in procedures.
I don't care about taxation of trade routes. I was 12 when this came out. I didn't care about taxation of trade routes then, and I don't care now. Plus, why am I watching Galactic C-SPAN? Hey, E.T.